In the past, Aizawa took part in a game where he was the target of mockery. They threw balls at him, laughed at his mistakes, and treated him as a source of entertainment. Panting, he tried to stay strong, but it was clear he was being humiliated by his classmates. One of the boys laughed, saying it was just a joke and that otherwise it would look like bullying. Aizawa, in silence, kept inside the expressions of pain and anger. Years later, time moved forward to May 2021. A school reunion for the class of 2000 was being held. Former classmates greeted each other, surprised by the changes after 20 years. Some commented on getting older, while others complimented those who had grown even more attractive. Satake, who in the past had been seen as just an ordinary girl, now drew attention with her beauty and charm, attracting stares and comments. Among the guests appeared Suzuki, remembered by many. He introduced himself with confidence, elegance, and was praised as always. It was clear how successful he had become, being recognized as a banker and a man of high status. Women commented that his wife must be lucky, while others were impressed by his enormous salary. As the master of ceremonies of the event, Suzuki stepped onto the stage. He made jokes, drew laughter, and thanked everyone for being there, stressing how special it was to gather so many familiar faces. The atmosphere seemed light until he announced that they would reminisce about their school days. At that moment, an unexpected guest walked into the hall. The man moved silently, drawing everyone's attention. As he got closer, his name tag revealed his name, Aizawa Yuichi. The atmosphere grew heavy. Murmurs spread among the attendees. Suzuki, surprised, froze for a moment upon seeing him. The past came flooding back, the scenes of assaults, taunts, and humiliations that Aizawa had suffered in the classroom. The hall fell into tense silence. Everyone stared at him, incredulous at his presence. Suzuki looked directly at that familiar face, and someone asked, with a mix of disbelief and provocation, how he had the courage to show up there after everything. The classmates whispered, recalling the dark past. The reunion, which had once seemed festive, now turned into a stage of painful memories and resentments. Suzuki raised his glass and toasted with everyone, recalling the good times of high school. While some laughed and responded with a timid cheers, others whispered. In the background, they commented that Aizawa had been the boy who stopped going to school after being bullied. Many wondered how he had found the courage to show up at that meeting. Amid the curious and judging stares, a woman approached. She called out to Aizawa, revealing herself as Takano. With a hesitant tone, she asked if he still remembered her. When he confirmed, she grew emotional. Takano confessed that she had always felt bad for never doing anything while the bullying was happening. She said she had wished to apologize one day. Embarrassed, she explained that she hadn't hurt him directly, but she blamed herself for having been a silent accomplice. While recalling how she had laughed at him in the past, Takano admitted that she now had a family and children, but still carried that weight on her conscience. She apologized countless times, asking if he held a grudge. Aizawa, serious, replied that she didn't need to worry. He smiled and said he didn't hate her. Relieved, she smiled back, even though she didn't know how to react. Other classmates, watching from a distance, whispered whether they too should apologize. Some minimized the past, saying it hadn't been that serious. Suzuki, attentive, heard one of them almost admit guilt, but interrupted with a firm look. He then approached Aizawa, calling him by name and saying it had been a long time since they last saw each other. With a smile, he said it was good to see him again. Suzuki recalled the time when Aizawa stopped attending classes, mentioning that it had been during the last semester. He pretended to feel regret, saying everyone had been sad. With irony, he claimed that everyone had wanted to graduate together with him. Then, without hesitation, he revealed that it had all been nothing more than a game, a pastime where the target was humiliating Aizawa. For him, it had only been fun until graduation. The atmosphere grew heavier. Aizawa, however, extended his hand, staring at Suzuki with determination. He said he had also wished to see him again. With a cold smile, he stated he was glad Suzuki hadn't changed. The two shook hands in front of their classmates, who watched in silence. The photographer asked everyone to gather for a group photo. Suzuki wrapped his arm around Aizawa, pulling him close. While keeping his smile for the others, Suzuki whispered harsh words. He said that Aizawa had ruined the party with his presence. He called him an idiot, asking if he didn't realize the atmosphere. Annoyed, he told him he was a nuisance. He recalled the school days balls thrown at Aizawa's face, the time they forced him to eat garbage when they dunked his head into the toilet. Suzuki criticized his silence and his inability to fight back. Aizawa questioned if fighting back would have ended the bullying. With a cynical smile, he concluded that maybe it would have, but only in the end. Suzuki kept talking as the group got ready for the picture, saying there is always a reason for someone to be the target of bullying, smiling cruelly as he said it. He looked at Aizawa and said his face was stiff, ordering him to smile. Later, Suzuki returned home, where his wife welcomed him warmly. He replied with a smile, saying the reunion had been fun. His daughter asked if everyone had changed after 20 years, and he simply said not much. Alone with his thoughts, Suzuki remembered that he had always been seen as a failure, and that once a loser, always a loser. That was how things worked. The next morning, he put on his suit and smiled at his family, saying he was having a good start to the day thanks to them. Meanwhile, his daughter Shiori was getting ready for school. But when she opened her locker, she found her shoes destroyed and notes filled with insults. Among them was a cruel message, the word "die" written prominently. She tried to hide it, pretending it was nothing, but in her eyes the fear was clear. In the hallway, Shiori came across Aizawa, now a teacher at her school. He called her by her surname and led her to the audio-visual room. There, he asked if someone was bothering her, recalling that she had lost her history book the previous week, hinting that it might have been stolen. Shiori denied it with a forced smile, saying it was only carelessness, that she got along with everyone. Aizawa observed her in silence, but saw through the facade. He told her that small problems, when ignored, can grow and become a heavy burden. He raised his arm, showing his scars, saying he had learned that firsthand. The girl looked at him in shock, not understanding, asking what had happened to his arm. He explained that someone had done it to him when he was still a student. She was horrified, eyes wide, and asked if he had been a victim of bullying. He silently confirmed, admitting that he had. She thought it was terrible, trying to grasp how someone could do such a thing. In the end, with tears in her eyes, she concluded that he didn't seem human. The teacher then smiled softly and promised he would do his best to protect her. His gaze conveyed calmness, but behind his words there was something enigmatic. Later, the principal gathered the teachers and spoke about the recent news regarding bullying. He said that such cases could influence the students. He asked everyone to stay alert. He finished by saying that he had high expectations for them. He smiled and said it was important to keep the school's record clean, just like in previous years. He made it clear that reporting incidents would not be easy. The meeting ended and everyone returned to their tasks. Aizawa was walking down the hallway when another teacher, Yazaki, called out to him. They talked about Aizawa's adjustment, since he had only been there for 2 months. Yazaki shared that she had been there for 3 years and still found it difficult to deal with the school's way of doing things. She explained that the principal's focus on keeping the records clean made it harder to report bullying cases. It was more pressure on the teachers instead of real support. But Yazaki said that even so, she would still do everything she could to protect her students. Aizawa looked at her and smiled. He said her attitude was wonderful. He said he completely agreed. Later, the students were in class. Shiori seemed distracted and thoughtful. When the lesson began, Aizawa called her out for being late. Then, he started the lesson on heredity. While he explained, Shiori remembered what he had told her before. She recalled his words about how bullying leaves scars. She thought about his injured arm. Her chest tightened, and she began to wonder if she herself was being bullied. But she didn't know exactly by whom. Her thoughts grew heavier. Then a classmate raised his hand and asked a question. He wanted to know if personality could also be inherited through genes. The teacher began explaining to the class that about half of a person's personality is inherited. He said that the environment someone grows up in, as well as parenting, has only a small effect on personality. Then, he told them about an interesting experiment that had been done in the past. He asked if the students knew about identical twins. He explained that they share exactly the same genes, with 100% similarity. There were cases where twins were raised in different families, and scientists studied the variation in personality between them. If there had been a large difference, it would have shown that the environment had a strong influence, but the results showed many similarities between the twins. Various tests were done, such as extroversion, honesty, and mental strength. In the end, the conclusion was that genes really do affect personality. Then, he said that half comes from genetics, but the other half comes from the external environment. In practice, this means friends, according to him, friends influence much more than one's own family. Of course, in abusive families, the situation is different, but under normal conditions, it is friendships that shape a person more. The teacher then summarized by saying that personality is strongly influenced by genetics. After going on with the explanation, he asked everyone to return to the textbook material. As he left the classroom, he called out to Suzuki. He noticed she had been distracted during the lesson and asked if she was all right. She replied with a nervous smile, saying she had just stayed up too late. He told her to have a safe trip home. The girl looked worried and called him again, asking if he had been able to stop the bullying he had suffered in the past. The teacher was surprised by the question. She, embarrassed, tried to cover it up by saying she just couldn't stop thinking about what he had told her the day before. At that moment, one of her friends appeared and called her to go with her, since they were already late for prep school. She quickly said goodbye to the teacher and ran off, leaving him alone. Afterwards, the teacher entered the science prep room. There he remained in silence until he thought to himself that the time had come to face something. Suddenly, his memories took him back to when he was a student. He saw himself being held down by classmates while one of them carried a bottle of liquid and laughed cruelly. They shouted that it was his execution, asking if he wanted to know what it felt like to have his face burned by acid. The desperate boy begged for help, but the liquid was thrown onto his face. He screamed in panic, believing his face was melting. The others laughed, and one revealed it was only water, mocking his desperation. The boy fell to the ground, being kicked, while hearing that no one would ever help him. He trembled, drenched, listening to voices saying no one needed him, that he shouldn't even be alive. He stared at the window, reflecting that he was only alive because he hadn't been able to stop existing. Shiori returned home and announced her arrival. Her mother came into the room, noticing she had taken long. She explained that she had stayed at prep school studying math. The mother confessed that, over the last 3 years, it had been difficult to deal with other parents. Shiori stood up, bothered, catching her mother's attention. Then Shiori forced a smile. She said she would enter the school of their dreams. She confidently affirmed that she would do her best. At that moment, her father came home and greeted her with a warm smile. He said she must be tired and hungry. Shiori responded cheerfully, calling him father, happy to have him there. During the conversation, Shiori told her father about the science class topic. She said she learned that personality can be inherited. She said she was surprised, since she had never heard that before. The father agreed, saying that maybe it was true. Then he looked at her and said the two of them were alike. He said both were enthusiastic, good at making friends, and never ignored those left out. Shiori smiled emotionally, saying she was like her father. She felt happy about that, filled with pride. The father laughed softly, sharing that moment with her. Then he commented that her science teacher seemed interesting. He said he would like to meet him someday. The next day, Shiori was at school. Studying during the break, she was getting help from a classmate named Yumi. Shiori thanked her enthusiastically, admiring her friend's intelligence. Other classmates commented that Shiori was always studying during lunch. They said she had become even more dedicated after leaving the basketball club. The girls recalled that she used to be part of the basketball club. She confirmed, saying she still liked the sport. Even though she had quit to focus on exams, she still felt connected to it. When she heard they would have PE class, Shiori became excited. She shouted happily that they would play basketball, but when she went to her locker to look for her uniform, she found it empty. Alarmed, she looked around until she found her sports clothes in the trash. The uniform with her name on it was crumpled and dirty among the garbage. Her eyes widened in shock. At that moment, Yumi entered the room and saw the scene. She laughed, saying she would change first. She commented that she had forgotten, but a teacher was looking for her. Shiori was surprised, her thoughts confused. She questioned in her mind if her friend had just seen what had happened. If she had seen it, why didn't she say anything about it? As he walked down the hallway, he saw her. He remembered the cruel words, someone mocking him, asking if he really thought they would help him. He called her, asking what was wrong. Suddenly, she hurried, running down the hallway. He watched from a distance as she moved away, and he thought to himself that the real hell would begin from there. Shiori was taking part in PE class, but her mind was far away. She looked around, felt a weight in her chest, and thought about something she didn't want to face. Confused, she wondered why her friend pretended not to have seen anything. During practice, a classmate noticed Suzuki's distant look. He asked if something was on her mind, but she denied it, trying to cover up. Soon after, teacher Yazaki appeared with a light energy. She said it had been a while and that they should just have fun. Shiori held the ball firmly, determined to enjoy that moment. She thought that, despite everything, she would do her best, even after 3 months without playing. In the middle of the game, Shiori scored a basket. Everyone praised her, and for a moment, she felt good. But her mind quickly returned to doubt. She looked at Yumi, trying to ask about what she had seen earlier. Yumi gave a strange smile and changed the subject. She said it was nothing special, that they should just enjoy the game. Before Shiori could insist, the match grew intense. Another player collided hard with her and fell to the ground. Her classmates ran to help her. They asked if she was okay, but she felt pain and couldn't respond right away. She was taken to the infirmary. The nurse said she was conscious and would be fine, but needed rest. Shiori, lying on the bed, reflected on her distraction. She said it was her fault for getting lost in thought during the game. The teacher tried to reassure her, reminding her that the exams were coming up. He said he was willing to listen if she wanted to talk. Shiori sighed, tired of thinking so much. She decided to sleep for a while to escape that weight. While she slept deeply, someone entered the infirmary quietly. It was him, standing beside the bed, watching her in silence. Meanwhile, her friend waited outside the teacher's room, restless, holding her arms tightly. She saw Professor Aizawa approaching down the hallway and called out to him, worried. The teacher asked what was wrong, reminding her that the last class was about to begin. Yuna replied that she was worried about Shiori, even though the nurse had said she was fine. He explained that Shiori's mother had already come to pick her up, and that was why the girl had gone home. Even so, the worrying wouldn't leave her mind. Aizawa was surprised by the student's attitude. He asked if she was really worried about her classmate. Yuna, confused, reacted strongly. She said of course she was, that Shiori was her friend. Embarrassed, Yuna ran off, while Aizawa murmured the word friends, reflecting on it. Soon after, another teacher entered the staff room with a cell phone. He said a student had found Shiori's phone. Aizawa offered to take it to her house. He would also take the chance to deliver some worksheets. At Suzuki's house, her mother received the teacher with apologies, thanking him for taking the trouble. Aizawa reassured her, saying he was also concerned about the student. The mother said that, in truth, she hadn't wanted her daughter to have a cell phone, believing it would interfere with her studies. However, since the girl stayed out late because of prep school, the father insisted she should have one. She sighed, admitting it would be strange for her daughter to be the only one without one. Soon, his gaze was drawn to a family photograph. Displayed on the cabinet, Aizawa's expression changed, turning serious and melancholic. The mother noticed and asked what was wrong, but he replied that it was nothing. Suddenly, the house phone rang. The mother excused herself and left to answer it. Alone, Aizawa approached the photograph and held the frame. He whispered quietly that it wasn't fair. At that moment, Suzuki appeared at the door, calling out to the teacher. She asked if there was something wrong with the photo. He covered it up, placing the frame back where it was, and said there was nothing wrong. The teacher commented that in the photo they looked very happy. He asked if she loved her father. Suzuki opened a bigger smile and said that she loved her father very much. She explained that the picture had been taken the day she managed to ride a bicycle for the first time. She remembered how terrified she was to try without the training wheels, but her father stayed with her the whole day. At first, she tried pedaling just for herself, but later she only wanted to see the joy on his face. The teacher listened in silence, feeling a mix of pain and nostalgia. For her, the memory was happiness. For him, it was a weight he couldn't let go of. Shiori smiled and felt happy realizing that everyone was worried about her. The teacher reminded her that her cell phone was nearby, and she thanked him cheerfully. When she saw the messages she had received, she told herself it was a good thing. He asked if that made her happy. She answered naturally that it did, laughing sincerely. Soon, her mother appeared, asking why her daughter was down there, and Shiori replied that everything was fine, trying to reassure her. The mother said her father would be home soon. Shiori became excited and suggested the teacher wait a bit to meet him. But the mother interrupted, saying he was busy, while the teacher only smiled in silence. The father arrived in a hurry, calling for his daughter. She ran to him, assuring him she was fine. Outside, the teacher walked away, remembering how he too had once wanted to be introduced to the girl's father. Meanwhile, Shiori was wrapped in her father's tight embrace, complaining that it hurt but smiling warmly. Later, alone in her room, she received messages from her worried friend. Then a new notification caught her attention. It was a message from an unknown sender. Curious, she accepted the request and discovered it was a video. When she opened it, her eyes widened in shock. It was a recording of herself, sleeping in the school infirmary. Horrified, she watched the images and saw hands approaching her body. In the video, someone touched her without her noticing, moving her clothes. Panic took over her as she pulled away from the phone in shock. Unable to believe what she was seeing, she asked herself what kind of video that was. Her heart racing, Professor Aizawa answered the phone calmly. On the other end of the line, a nervous voice thanked him for his help the day before. He asked how Suzuki was feeling. The mother replied that she wasn't well and wanted to take her to the hospital. Aizawa wished her a quick recovery and ended the call. In the classroom, Aizawa finished roll call and announced the end of homeroom. Meanwhile, Yuna hesitated, stood from her desk, and went to Nagamo. She asked if she could bother her, since she knew Nagamo was close to Suzuki. With her eyes downcast, Nagamo admitted that she had been the one who bumped into Suzuki and felt guilty about it. She said she had sent Suzuki a message but hadn't received a reply. Even though the message had been read, she began to imply that Yuna, since she was always with Suzuki, must know everything. They commented that Suzuki was too clingy and even forced Yuna to study with her during breaks. The classmates laughed, saying that sometimes it seemed she was tired of her friendship with Suzuki. Embarrassed, Yuna forced a smile and ended up admitting that yes, a little. The classmates laughed more, commenting on how Suzuki was maybe even too friendly. Aizawa, watching from a distance, closed his eyes with a serious look and thought bitterly, "What wonderful friends you are." Shiori had spent the entire previous day resting. Now she was feeling better and thanked with a smile. The nurse asked how she was feeling, and Shiori replied that she was fine. Even so, the woman reminded her that she had hit her head hard, so they would still keep her under observation for a few days. Shiori, a little nervous, said she had a question. She wanted to know if anyone had come to visit her while she was asleep. The nurse said that many people had stopped by, including the girls from her class, all worried about her. Shiori pressed further, asking if there had been anyone else. The nurse thought for a moment and then remembered that, besides her classmates, Professor Aizawa had also visited. Back in the school hallway, Shiori reflected alone. In the end, she hadn't discovered who had made the video. From the nurse's words, it could only have been someone in her class. That left her uneasy. She wondered if she had done something to deserve it. Fear grew inside her, and she hoped that the video hadn't spread. Even so, she opened the classroom door with a forced smile, greeting everyone in the morning. Her classmates approached happily, glad to see her back. They said they had been worried, asked how she was, and Shiori answered with an animated expression. Yumi, her friend, also came over. She said she had really been worried since Shiori hadn't replied to her messages. Shiori, embarrassed, only apologized, saying she had been too tired the day before. Yumi handed her the notes from the previous lesson. Shiori was surprised, but accepted them gratefully. Around them, other classmates talked, laughed, and joked. Everyone seemed happy that she was fine, but Shiori couldn't relax. Looking at their smiling faces, she wondered if the culprit was among them. The thought made her uncomfortable. Even while smiling on the outside, inside, she could only repeat to herself that she hated the situation. In science class, the teacher explained about cell division. Shiori and Yumi prepared the slides to observe under the microscope. Yumi showed her how to use the tweezers, while Shiori paid close attention. They commented that the experiments also affected their grades. Shiori worked hard, thinking she didn't want to cause trouble for Yumi. While working, she promised herself she would do her best. Suddenly, she heard classmates laughing nearby. They were watching a video on a phone and said it was crazy. Shiori froze, fearing it was her video. Nervously, she watched them discreetly. The girls laughed, saying it was risky not to wake up with someone doing that. Shiori's heart pounded. She wondered if it really was the video she dreaded so much. When one of the girls showed the phone to Yumi, Shiori couldn't take it anymore. Overcome with desperation, she rushed forward and slapped it, knocking the device to the floor. With tears in her eyes, she screamed for them to stop immediately. The classroom went silent as everyone turned toward the noise. Some students looked at each other and asked if that had been Suzuki. Meanwhile, Suzuki looked confused, not understanding what was going on. Suddenly, she grew angry and grabbed for it. She yelled, asking what was happening, and demanded the phone back. The atmosphere grew tense, but Suzuki whispered softly that they shouldn't worry. The confusion grew when another classmate pointed out that the screen wasn't broken, but that wasn't the real problem. On the phone was a compromising photo. The room fell silent until the teacher intervened, asking for calm. He reminded them they were in class and took the phone. With a serious look, he said everyone needed to control themselves. The rules had to be respected, and using a cell phone during class was wrong. The teacher decided he would keep the phone until the end of the day. Yumi protested, but he stood by his decision. Then he called Suzuki to speak with her in private. In the hallway, the teacher asked if her reaction had anything to do with her absence the day before. Suzuki hesitated, but eventually admitted that she was at her limit. With tears in her eyes, she said she wanted to tell him everything that had been happening. He reminded her that he was on her side and asked her to come to his office after lunch. Suzuki took a deep breath, thanked him, and agreed to meet him. During the break, her classmates commented on what had happened in class. They acknowledged that Suzuki had been brave. Suzuki approached to apologize, and they offered her bean bread as a way to reconcile. Yumi, who had also been involved, tried to downplay the situation. The girls invited her to have lunch with them, insisting until she accepted. Suzuki was also invited to join them. While they ate, one of the girls suggested going to karaoke later. Everyone seemed excited, but Yumi refused, saying she had student council matters to take care of. The girls gathered together, chatting happily. Suddenly, Suzuki realized they had created a group chat on their phones. Her face froze in surprise, and the tension rose when they saw that even Yumi had been included. Suzuki grew nervous, her heart raced, and she didn't know what to say. Soon, she stood up quickly, muttering that she had somewhere else to be. Her friends called out to her, but she hurried out into the hallway. Walking alone, Suzuki ran into a classmate. It was Manhwa, an old acquaintance. She greeted him with surprise. It had been a long time since they last spoke. She thanked him for returning her cell phone, which she had lost. Manhwa explained that he had found it under a bench. It must have fallen when she was dozing off during lunch. They reminisced about the past. Then Suzuki asked which class he was in now. Manhwa answered calmly, mentioning his room and teacher. Manhwa then told her he had seen the teacher using Suzuki's cell phone. He said he had recognized the case. It was very unique. Suzuki was shocked, not understanding why he would do that. Doubts began to grow in her mind. She remembered several strange situations. Every time something troubling happened to her, the teacher was nearby. That didn't seem like a coincidence. Fear took over her. Soon after, the teacher appeared before her. He called her to go with him to the prep room. Suzuki hesitated, her heart racing, and she tried to refuse. Suddenly, he grabbed her arm. Suzuki tried to pull away, frightened. The teacher asked why she had changed her mind so suddenly. At that moment, Manhwa appeared and firmly said that what was happening was harassment. Trembling, she gathered her courage and said she couldn't trust him. She apologized and ran off. The teacher stared at Manhwa seriously. He asked if the boy had told her something. Manhwa answered that yes, he had. The teacher had already suspected. Manhwa confessed that he told her he had seen him using her phone 2 days earlier, after school. And he asked why he had done that. The teacher said that from now on, it would be better if he avoided speaking to the girl. Manhwa grew angry, not understanding why he should stay away from her. But the teacher only repeated that it was better for both of them. He walked away with firm steps, ending the conversation. Manhwa was left confused, not knowing what to think. He couldn't understand the man's behavior. Meanwhile, Suzuki walked alone down the hallway outside. The teacher watched her from the window. He regretted losing her trust, but accepted the situation calmly. Still, he thought that he would always be there, watching over her as usual. She wore a worried expression. In her thoughts, she asked herself who she could trust now. She no longer knew what to do, nor who to turn to. She wondered who would be willing to listen to her. Then, her eyes fixed on a familiar figure. She recognized another teacher, Yazaki-sensei. The teacher seemed distracted, talking on the phone, but she gave off a different aura. Shiori gave up on speaking to her. The teacher laughed, saying that outside of work she was just a woman, not a teacher. She arranged to meet at 8 o'clock that night, at their usual hotel. On the other end of the line was Suzuki's father. It was clear the two of them had a secret relationship. He said he also couldn't wait to see her. Later, a man named Nomura went to Sanmaru Bank to request a loan of 12 million yen. He explained that he needed the money to keep his factory running. He said it was just working capital and that things would soon get back on track. The employee, Suzuki, listened calmly and looked over the papers. He said he couldn't approve it. He explained that the factory had been in the red for 2 years already. He said Nomura already had accumulated debt and that it was very difficult for the bank to help in such a situation. Nomura panicked. He begged Suzuki to reconsider. He grabbed the employee's suit, crying and pleading. He said that if even the bank abandoned him, his life and his factory would be finished. Suzuki remained cold. He asked him to let go of his shirt. He said that, in truth, he was doing him a favor by denying more debt. He reminded him that Nomura had a small child and that sinking further wouldn't help at all. Nomura broke into tears. He left shattered and destroyed. Suzuki then let out a strange smile. It was a cruel smile, showing that he enjoyed the suffering of others inside the bank. His colleagues praised him. They said he was incredible for keeping calm. The manager also showed admiration. Some even commented that it almost looked like he enjoyed the client's pain. Suzuki was called the best in the department. They said he would be promoted next year. He listened to it all with pride. Outside the bank, Suzuki lived for pleasures. He was having an affair with a young teacher. He treated her only as a convenient toy. He manipulated her easily and laughed inside. In his thoughts, he called everyone idiots. Colleagues, bosses, partners, and lovers were nothing more than pieces he controlled. For him, life was easy. He had never known defeat. Then he grabbed her head tightly, pulling her close. He told her she was the only one he truly loved, and she replied softly, saying it was fine. It had already been a year since they met, and he thought she had become more selfish lately. In his mind, he decided that it was probably time to cut her off for good. When he returned home, a woman greeted him warmly, calling him dear. She smiled and welcomed him, but in his mind, he thought it was a shame he couldn't touch her anymore. He asked where Shiori was, and the woman explained that she was taking a bath. He answered calmly, but inside he reflected on his life. He had never lost before, never made mistakes, but his only slip had been this woman. She had gotten pregnant at 19. He only found out after the abortion deadline had already passed. That really caught him off guard. She believed that having a child could fix their broken relationship. Everything went according to her plan and he couldn't escape. She had completely trapped him. Welcome back, Shiori shouted. He smiled back, saying he was home, even. He was surprised at how naturally the smile came out. Things were different now. He felt warmth in his chest, realizing that he had truly learned to love her from the bottom of his heart. He asked about school, and she replied happily, saying she had made friends and was having fun. She didn't really look happy, but he didn't notice. He thought to himself that she lived a good life. She had a young and strong father, and he believed she should be proud of her own family. Meanwhile, Shiori faced another reality. At school, she found cruel notes stuffed into her bag, calling her ugly, trash, and telling her to die. She trembled, wondering how long this would go on. A classmate noticed and grew worried, asking her to talk to a teacher, but Shiori forced a smile, saying it was nothing, that it didn't matter, even though she was falling apart inside. She ran off, hiding her pain behind a fake laugh. Later, some classmates were talking about her. One suggested adding her to the group chat. Another commented that they had seen her getting along with Manhwa-kun from another class. Rumors spread quickly and suspicion grew. Shiori stood frozen, surrounded by the stares of her classmates. The weight of their judgment fell on her, and she realized how cruelly isolated she had become. Aizawa walked down the hallway. The air grew heavy, eyes met, and silence spoke louder than any words. Soon after, anger took over. Another girl slammed her fist on the desk, irritated, complaining loudly. She asked why someone had talked with Suzuki, insisting they were friends. The girl tried to cover it up, saying she barely spoke to Suzuki. She denied being her friend, distancing herself quickly so as not to be associated with her. Deep down, she didn't want to deal with Suzuki and said it without shame. The mood shifted into laughter, but teacher Yazaki, who was watching, understood exactly what was happening. In the science room, Aizawa asked about bullying. Teacher Yazaki said that Suzuki had been acting strangely lately, keeping her distance. Falling silent, Aizawa was questioned, but he replied with a calm smile. He said that in his class, there were no bullies. It was a firm statement, yet strangely far from reality. The teacher wasn't convinced. In the end, the tension erupted into a direct confrontation. A hand slammed against the door, a serious gaze met the other. He said not to interfere, not to stick her nose where it didn't belong. Meanwhile, Suzuki walked alone through the streets after school. A classmate, Manaka, called out to her, looking worried. He wanted to talk about Aizawa-sensei. Suzuki was startled but agreed to listen. Manaka seemed restless. He said that the way the teacher had acted the previous week wasn't normal. He had decided to investigate on his own. He told her that he had looked into Aizawa and discovered that he had previously worked at another school. The name of that school brought memories back to Suzuki. Kaima First Middle School. She had heard of that place before. When Manaka dug for more information, everything suddenly returned to her mind. The pieces began to fit together, and a greater mystery revealed itself before her. About half a year ago, a video of school violence had spread across the internet. It showed students beating up a classmate in the schoolyard, and it quickly drew public attention. The case was so widely discussed that it even appeared on the news. The bullies were exposed online. Their names, addresses, and even the companies where their parents worked were revealed. The repercussions were immense, and even classmates who were somehow linked to the case also ended up having personal information leaked. The teacher responsible for that class was not spared. His name was released along with the others, staining his career. That teacher was Aizawa Yuichi, who was now the current teacher of the students. Sasuke left work with a tired expression. He thought about going home early since his wife had told him she would be late because of work. Before leaving, his eyes fell on a poster announcing a school reunion. He remembered that the organizer of the event had been Shoji Ryoko. Despite her age, she still looked good, and she had managed to gather the class for the reunion. As he walked, he received an unexpected call. On the other end of the line was Shoji. She apologized for calling so late and mentioned the photo from the reunion. Suzuki thanked her for bringing everyone together, saying that without her help, no one would have shown up. But Ryoko interrupted him. She revealed that she had not been the one responsible for contacting their former classmates. In fact, someone had even found her address and demanded that she gather everyone. Suzuki was puzzled, but before he could react, he heard her voice trembling. She said that this person had held a grudge against them for 20 years. He had not forgotten anything that happened in the past. Suzuki began to grow irritated, trying to understand who was behind all of it. Meanwhile, Ryoko confessed that she had been afraid to refuse. Suddenly, Aizawa was standing before Suzuki. Ryoko was still speaking on the phone, almost in despair. She revealed that the one behind everything was Aizawa. Suzuki, shocked, heard the confirmation live. It was truly Aizawa Yuichi. The coincidence seemed impossible, but there he was. After so many years, staring at him face to face,